Good morning, everyone. My name is Xiang Song. I'm a researcher in the University of Cambridge. So it's my pleasure to present our work today. So our work is personality recognition by modeling person-specific cognitive processes using graph representation. Our research aims to answer a question, who am I? So human identity is a puzzle thing which contains a lot of things, but we do know part of our identity is our personality. Then what is a personality? Personality is actually a psychological status that to explain wide variety of human behaviors. In fact, different people will have different personality and also reflected by their different behaviors. To measure the complicated personality, previous psychologists proposed to personality traits models. So these traits, in fact, evaluate the aspects of personality that are relatively stable over time but differ across individuals, which means it's like to measure something unique for each person. In our research, we used the big 5 personality traits, which has been widely used in previous studies. And more importantly, previous psychological and biological studies suggested that personality is well associated with human cognitive process. In other words, what you are thinking, what your behavior is quite related to your personality, which is also a theoretical basis of our research. Based on the previous studies, the personality recognition can be in fact categorized into 2 classes. The first one is the true personality recognition, which is associated with the person-specific cognitive processes. These cognitive processes can impact the generation of the human expressive behaviors. According to the figure, we can see that the human expressive behaviors, which is called distal cues here, is generated by human cognitive process. And the personality will also have the impact on this generation. That's why when we face the same situation, different people will generate different behaviors. Besides this true personality, there's another personality type we call personality perception, which is the external observer's perception on the target individual. This personality perception can be different from the true personality because, as we can see from the figure, the personality perception also depends on the external observer's perception modeling. This process also depends on the external observer's personality and cognitive process, which means they could be biased. So we can see even for the same target person, the different external observer may give the different personality perception judgment. However, for the true personality, it should be always the same for the target person. However, to the best of our knowledge, all existing audiovisual-based automatic personality analysis approach, they only do the personality perception prediction. So in fact, they train a machine learning model or deep learning model which plays the same role as the external observer. So both machine learning model and the human external observer will take the target subject's expressive behavior as the input and then make their own judgment to make this apparent personality prediction. So in short, this machine learning model is actually acting the role of the external observer and may not reliable to predict the true personality because the true personality should be comes from the human cognition. So to this end, we propose the first audiovisual true personality prediction approach. In our approach, we can see we use a CNN model to simulate the person-specific cognitive process of the target subjects, and then use this person-specific cognitive processes to predict the true personality. In fact, when we build this person-specific cognitive process, which should be simulate the person-specific human cognitive processes, we build our system based on the previous psychological studies that the true personality should be impact on the cognitive processes of generating the human distal cues. In our research, we evaluate our proposed idea under the dyadic interaction scenarios. So in these scenarios, there's a speaker and a listener, and our target person is a listener. So we can see here the listener's facial reaction, which is the listener's distal cues, are mainly impacted by 2 things. One is the speaker's behavior, and another is the listener's cognitive process. And then we know the speaker's behavior, and we know the listener's facial reaction. What we want to calculate is the listener's human cognition, which is cognitive process. And then we use this cognitive process to predict the listener's true personality. So let's play this video again. Firstly, we have a speaker, and then we have a listener. So we can see when speaker are talking about something, the listener will have some facial reactions. And if we train a CNN that can reproduce such reactions, then we believe this CNN can simulate a similar cognitive process of generating digital cues for the listener. To design our CNN model that aims to reproduce the human cognitive processes, we draw our attention on the human process model proposed by the previous psychological studies. So the human process model is actually a famous model that explains how our cognitive process works. As we can see from this figure, firstly, the perceptual processor will take the external information into our brain and then feed to the cognitive processor. The cognitive processor will process our information, and this information will then feed to the motor processor, as here. And the motor processor will control our face to generate our facial reactions. So in our model, we're also doing the same things. Firstly, we use an audio encoder and a visual encoder as an AI perceptual processor, which takes the external speaker's audio-visual information. And then the fusion model plays the role of the cognitive processor, which further combines the audio-visual information and generates some latent features. After that, this latent feature will feed to the decoder, which plays the role of the motor processor. This decoder will finally generate facial reactions of the listener. In fact, in the human process model, there's also a working memory and a long-term memory which store the information of each step. So in our design, we also propose to use the long-short-term memory network, plays the role of the working memory and long-term memory in the human process model. Once the basic topology of the CNNs are decided, we propose to search a person-specific CNN architecture for different individuals. So as we can see from this figure, the input is the speaker's audio-visual information, where the visual information is represented by the facial landmark sequences, and the audio information is represented by the MFCC features. Then we input both audio-visual information into the network. Then this network will adaptively optimize its architecture, weights, and other parameters to optimally reproduce the facial reactions of the listener. So we can see here, there's an adaptive loss here, because we assume during the facial reaction, there always a time delay for the listener because they need to process the information received and then make the response. This time delay can be different for different person and also can be different for the single person that under different scenarios. Therefore, we compare the predictions with a set of ground truths that pre-defined by a time window, and then we choose the most similar ground truths as the final ground truth to computing the loss value during the search. As we can see, this is the person-specific CNN search for different individuals. So initially, they have the same architectures. And then, after several epochs searching, each person-specific CNN will have different architectures, represented by their color of operations. So this difference also means that different person will have different personalities. So in other words, the difference in this architecture represents the difference in individuals' personality. In the searched CNN, we can say each node represented by the red cycle contains a set of future maps, and the edges between the nodes represented a set of operations, for example, convolution, pooling, reloop. And then we are not using this person-specific CNN to process any data. Instead, we use its architecture as a representation for each person-specific cognitive process. So in fact, the edge between each two nodes, we are treating them as vertices in the graph representation. These vertices contains the corresponding operation parameters and the CNN weights of the corresponding urges in the CNN. Then we propose the first work to deep learning the multidimensional urge filter that to define the relationship between two vertices. Firstly, if the two vertices, their corresponding urges are connected to the same nodes in the person-specific CNN, then we denote these two vertices are adjacent. After that, we concatenate the two vertices filter here, and then feed to a urge filter extraction network to deep learning their relationships. As a result, we can construct a person-specific graph representation for each target subjects. Each graph representation represents the person-specific cognitive process of the target subjects, and these graph representations can be fed to the GCN for predicting their true personalities. This is the result on the true personality dataset, and we can see that the proposed approach outperformed all the automatically personality perception approaches over all 5 traits. Here is the visualization of the searched person-specific CNN of generating the corresponding facial reactions. As we can see, the predicted reactions are very similar to the real reaction, which means the searched CNNs can simulate good person-specific cognitive processes. In conclusion, the main contribution of this work is that we propose a brand new way to understand human mental status, for example, personality, and this also can be extended to depression and anxiety recognition. In addition, our work can be also applied to generate the facial reactions for virtual human or robotics. Thank you very much for your listening, and please let us know if there are any questions or issues.